not, as the state, provide you with an investigation as it should have been done in 1983. I'll concede to you the investigation in 1983 was horrific, shameful, incomplete. I think you'll hear that's because no one cared about Timothy Coggins and law enforcement back in 1983, or not their main investigators. But what we do have, and what you will see, is an investigator and a sheriff's office today that worked diligently and tirelessly to bring this case to you, to bring justice today. We cannot go back and recover what is gone, but you can atone for the sins of the past. And so at the end of this trial, when Mr. Coker stands up here and delivers his closing argument to you, he will ask you to do that. You atone for the sins of the past. Deliver a verdict that is just and that is right and that is guilty. Thank you for your time.
John Thomas.
Ladies and gentlemen, anger, rage, fury. The state wants you mad. The state wants you angry. The state wants you in a hurry. They want you to rush through this case. Just like in 1983, they rushed through the investigation. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to hear that this man's body was found on October the 9th, 1983. And that by December the 26th, 1983, and ladies and gentlemen, that crime scene does scream out. It screams out, look at the evidence. There was evidence recovered. And then it was lost. It screams out, listen to me. And the state didn't. The state didn't listen to the crime scene. They picked up all the evidence. They tested some of it. And now it's lost to us. Ladies and gentlemen, there were bullet shell casings found at that crime scene. They're gone. Don't know where they are. There were tire impressions of a vehicle. One of the state's biggest issues is that Mr. Coggins was allegedly drugged behind a vehicle. There were tire impressions there. Plaster casts were made of those tire impressions. They're gone. Soil samples, multiple soil samples, where it appeared blood had been spilled on the ground. Those were gathered up. They're gone. Lost to us. The victim's sweater that he was wearing, a brown pullover sweater, covered in blood. It was recovered. The GBI worked this crime back in 1983. This was not just the local sheriff's office. This was the GBI. You're going to hear a man from the crime lab itself actually came down to the scene to collect evidence. Not just your normal, everyday special agent. Somebody from the actual crime lab came down and gathered up this evidence. There was a homemade wooden club. You're going to hear it looked like a chair leg or a table leg. You're going to see a picture of it. It was broken. It had tape around the bottom of it. It looked like somebody had homemade them a club of some sort. It was gathered up. It's gone. An empty Jack Daniels bottle. There it is. It's gone. bill recovered from a store the day after the murder with red stains on it. Gone, missing, no idea where he is. From the sweater, see, the sweater made it to the crime lab. You're going to hear that from that sweater, a head hair was found. Caucasian head hair. Crime lab made a slide, microscope slide of that. Basically said, hey, if you ever find a suspect to compare this to, we've got it. We can compare. Where's that head hair? We don't know. The state doesn't know. The jeans that he was wearing, recovered from there is a gray Caucasian head hair. Again, made a microscope slide of it. You ever find a suspect, you can compare it to him. Where did it go? This is in action. Nobody knows. Now I expect the state is going to tell you they've got some physical evidence. Some things that they recovered. They went out and did a search warrant on Mr. Gebhardt's property. They dug up a well from a long, long time ago. And they're going to tell you they found a knife in the well. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there's your knife. A tiny piece of a cheap Japanese steak knife thrown away in a trash pit, because that's what that well was. You're going to hear testimony that they recovered all kinds of things out of that well, because Mr. Gebhardt filled in that old well with trash. And that's what it was. It was a 20 years worth of trash. Now, ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Broder told you this is a cold case. It is. It's a really old case. But the state does not get a pass because the case is old. They have to prove to you this case just like they prove any other case. If this murder happened yesterday, the burden's beyond a reasonable doubt. Whether it happened yesterday or 30 years ago. You don't give the state a pass on their burden just because of how old the case is. Now, Ms. Broder told you a lot about what people are going to say that Mr. Gebhardt said over the years. But Ms. Broder didn't tell you yet about who it's coming from. And I want y'all during the trial to pay close attention to who is saying these things. One of their main witnesses is going to be Christopher Vaughn. Christopher Vaughn is going to say that back in the 80s, he heard Mr. Gebhardt say something about this murder. Wow. Well, then he must have run straight to the police and said something about it, right? No. You're going to hear that 22 or so years later, after Mr. Vaughn is in prison for child molestation, that he came forward and wanted to give information about this case. And you're going to hear from the officers themselves that took his statement. And probably from him too. That his hope was he'd get some kind of help out of this for his case. There's been some talk about how there are details in these statements that nobody could have known. Now, three of the people we expect that's going to take this stand and tell you that Mr. Gebhardt told them about this crime are people who found the body in 1983. Charles Carey Jr., Willard Sanders, and Christopher Ball. On October 9th, they're the ones that walked up on the body. They're the ones that found it. And 20 and 30 years later, they're the ones telling you, Mr. Gebhardt said something about killing this man. You're going to hear from some folks who are jailhouse informants, let's put it that way. You're going to hear from a couple of guys, I imagine, who are going to say while they were in jail with Frankie, that he made statements about this case. Again, I just want you to remember and look at where is that information coming from? What is their motivation for telling this information? Ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Broder told you that, back in 1983, we didn't have DNA. We didn't have testing for DNA. And she's correct, but we do have DNA testing now. And you're going to hear that in this case, they tested blood that was found on the blue jeans that Mr. Coggins was wearing. They found a DNA profile from that blood. They tested that profile against Mr. Gebhardt. It's not his DNA. They tested that blood against Mr. Moore, who's also on this indictment. It's not his DNA. That profile is still sitting there at the crime lab. It's not been tested against anybody else. Take that back. It may have been tested against one other person, Charles Carey. That's possible. But it's not been run through a DNA database, which they have access to. And every person who's been convicted of a felony after a certain date in the state of Georgia's DNA goes into that database. And you're going to hear why they didn't do it. Crime lab witness is going to tell you, well, there's so much blood at the scene, and the victim was hurt really badly, so we assume it's the victim's blood. Assume it's the victim's blood. Now, when they were testing it against Mr. Gebhardt, they weren't assuming that it was the victim's blood. They were testing it against Mr. Moore. They weren't assuming it was the victim's blood. When they went and swabbed Mr. Charles Carey Jr. to try to see if maybe his DNA matched, they must not have been assuming it was the victim's blood then. When it did not match the people they rushed to charge, then they assume it's the victim's blood. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want you to keep your cool. Be calm and collected. This is horrible. What was done to that man was terrible. But what you're here to decide is not, was it terrible? It's who did it. And can the state prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. Gebhardt did it? So don't let anger, don't let rage, don't let fury cloud your judgment. Because that's why we have once you hear all this, you're not going to have any choice but to have reasonable doubt in this case, ladies and gentlemen, that Mr. Gebhardt did not commit this horrible crime.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's a matter I must take up outside of your presence, so I'm going to ask that you briefly step into the jury room. And again, remember my instructions during any break or recess, you're not to discuss the case. If you'll step into the jury room for a few minutes, please. I'll ask the bailiffs, if the bailiffs will please bring in Ms. Brandy Abercrombie, please. Ms. Abercrombie, if you would please step to the podium, please. And if you would state your name for the record. And Ms. Abercrombie, are you a subpoenaed witness in this case?
Yes, sir.
Which side has subpoenaed you?
I'm not sure which side.
Okay, and you understand you're a sequestered witness, is that correct?
I was just aware that I was supposed to be here. I'm not sure what for.
Well, why weren't you in the courtroom? You were told you couldn't listen to what was happening, correct?
You just said, were there any witnesses? And I raised my hand and you said, go outside.
And no, I told you you were sequestered and not to discuss the case so that you would know nothing about the case. I'm now informed by the bailiffs that you were out there watching the live stream video of these proceedings, which is totally prohibited by the sequestration order.
Actually, I had just turned it on and I wasn't aware that I couldn't watch it on the.
Well, if you're not allowed to be in court and watch, what makes you think you could be in court, be outside of court and watch?
I didn't think about it, sir.
Can you tell me why you should not be held in contempt of court?
I didn't think about it. When he told me I couldn't watch it, I turned it off.
Well, that was after the state's entire opening statement and a portion of the defense opening statement. I find you are in contempt of court of violating the rule of sequestration. I'm going to order you in. Is she a state's witness or defense witness or both?
She's a state witness.
Okay. Ma'am, I'm going to order you in the county jail for 20 days. I will reconsider this after your testimony is complete. But I cannot. I have to guard the integrity of this case and the integrity of the witness's testimony. The reason of the sequestration is so that you're not affected by what anybody might say about this case. And by listening to the opening statements, you have opened yourself up to increased impeachment at this time. And I want to ask counsel for both sides to re-explain to all of your witnesses the rule of sequestration and how important it is to the integrity of their testimony and of this case. Ma'am, you'll go into the custody of the sheriff at this time and remain so, and I'll readdress your incarceration after your testimony is complete. Okay, you'll go with them, please. When does the state intend on calling her as a witness?
Judge, we'd like to discuss it. We may not call her to testify at this point.
Well, if you clear her as a witness, let me know and I'll readdress her incarceration.
Yes, sir, Your Honor.
Okay. We can bring the jury back in, please. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Would the state call the first witness, please?
We'll call Warren Tillman.
You would face me and raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the trial of this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I swear.
Okay, you'll have a seat, please. And if you would, state your name for the record.
Warren Tillman, Tillman.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Tillman. If you would, tell the jury a little bit about yourself, your background, your education.
Okay. I have a master's degree from the University of Georgia in 1972, a bachelor's degree in biochemistry from the University of Georgia in 1970. I have 3 years of postgraduate training in anatomy, histology, physiology, and pathology from Emory University School of Medicine. For 19 years, I was employed as a medical examiner for the state of Georgia with the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, Division of Forensic Sciences. During this period of time, I was under the direction and supervision of Dr. Larry B. Howard and Dr. J. Byron Dawson, both former directors of the crime lab. And during that period of time, I performed in the neighborhood of around 2,000 autopsies and testified in courts in the state of Georgia approximately 800 times.
And when you testified in the courts in the state of Georgia, did you testify as an expert in those over 800 times?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, we will tender Warren Tillman as an expert in forensic pathology.
Just a couple of questions. Mr. Tillman, you are not a medical doctor.
No, sir, I'm not.
And you're not a pathologist.
No, sir, I'm not.
And you're not a forensic pathologist.
I have training to give expert testimony as a forensic pathologist.
And you're not board certified in pathology.
I am not.
Forensic pathology.
I am not.
You know, at this time, I'm not sure Mr. Tillman's actually an expert. I mean, I know he's testified a lot of times, but he's not a medical doctor, he's not a pathologist, and he's not a forensic pathologist.
Based upon his background and training, I'll allow him to give his expert opinions
Thank you,
in
Judge.
those areas.
I don't think our medical examiners now have performed that many autopsies and testified that many times, so thank you. All right, Mr. Tillman, explain to the jury, nowadays we have doctors, pathologists that
Right.
perform autopsies. Back when you were performing autopsies, explain to the jury, did you have to be a doctor, did you not?
Under the Georgia Post-Mortem Act, the director of the crime lab could deem who he seemed qualified as a medical examiner, and this was, of course, after OJT and the medical training at Emory University. So that's basically what gave us the qualification, plus the OJT. It's a lot different. I mean, I've helped board-certified forensic pathologists.
Right. So let's talk about an autopsy, which is what you perform, or did perform. I
Yes.
understand now you're out of that field altogether.
Right.
Explain to the jury for me, what is an autopsy?
An autopsy is really an examination of a body for a number of reasons. It can be for evidentiary purposes. It can be for medical pathology purposes. The way that I will go about doing an autopsy for criminal proceedings is to begin with an examination of the head, continue to the anterior chest and abdomen, and then the upper arms, the lower extremities or the legs, and then the posterior surface. And while I'm doing this, I'm documenting any type of injuries that might be present on the body, as well as collecting any type of physical evidence that may be pertinent and present on the body.
And did you perform an autopsy on an individual, Timothy Coggins, back in 1983? I think
Yep.
it's October 9th, 1983.
I did, yes, ma'am.
And did you prepare a report?
I did.
I'm showing you what's been marked and previously provided to the defense in discovery with State's Exhibit 1. Do you recognize that, sir?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Okay. And is that your report?
My report with my signature.
You prepared it?
Yes.
And have there been any additions or deletions to that report at all?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't see any.
Okay. So it is a fair and accurate depiction of the report that you prepared back on October 9th of 1983.
It is.
Your Honor, I'll tender State's Exhibit 1.
You know, I have no objection as long as it does not go out with the jury.
Of course.
Okay, it's admitted.
Thank you. Now, there were a number of injuries to Timothy Coggins' body.
Yes, ma'am, there were.
Okay. And did you prepare something to aid yourself and the jury in describing those injuries?
Yes, ma'am, I did. Since there were such a large number, it can be very confusing if you're just reading through this, and it's better to see them physically where they would be located on the body.
Okay. I'm showing you what's been shown to the defense and marked as State's Exhibit 2. Do you recognize that?
Yes, ma'am.
And you prepared that?
I did prepare.
And that's to aid in your presentation to the jury?
That's correct.
Okay. Your Honor, we'll tender States 2 as a demonstrative for the purposes of this presentation.
No objection, demonstrative.
Submit it.
When you began the autopsy on Timothy Coggins, what did you first notice about the body?
Well, first of all, the body was lying in a white sheet. This was at the Spalding County Hospital.
So it was in Spalding County?
Yeah, yeah. And the clothing about the body consisted of a pair of blue jeans and a pair of white jockey shorts. I removed the clothing. The subject measured approximately 67 inches in length, weighed approximately 160 pounds.
Let me ask you about that, Doctor. He weighed approximately 160 pounds when you saw him, I'm sorry, Mr. Tillman, at the morgue. What was the state of the body? Was it in decomp?
Yes, it was decomposing. It showed evidence of decomposition, skin slippage, post-mortem decomposition, yes.
Okay. And can that cause bloating to the body?
Yes, it can.
Okay. And was there bloating to Mr. Coggins?
Yes, there was.
All right. What did his state of decomposition tell you, if anything, about how long he might have been out exposed?
Based on my experience in doing decomposition with different bodies and knowledge of those circumstances, also looking at that state as well as what is the time of year, what's the temperature, is there maggot activity, what are the sizes of the maggots present on the body, can give you an idea of approximate time that the body has been exposed.
Were you able to establish that in this case?
Based on what I found with the decomposition as well as the size of the maggots, I measured one maggot at about 3/8 of an inch, which generally means it's between a day and a half to 2 days, somewhere in that range.
All right. And I interrupted you, so I'm sorry. When you began the autopsy of Mr. Coggins, you began with his head, I think you were saying.
That's correct. And in the hair, I did find red clay as well as some cockleburrs, as well as other injuries.
Okay. And we'll talk about those when we get more specific here in just a moment. But after you examined his head and you found the mud and the cockleburrs and the injuries, what did you do then?
I then began examining the other areas of the body and measuring, describing the wounds, and then continuing, as I said, the anterior chest and abdomen, the upper extremities, the lower extremities, and posterior surface.
Okay. Before we get to the diagram, I want to show you State's Exhibits 3, 4, and 5. For the record, I have shown them to defense counsel. And I'll ask you if you recognize those.
Yes, ma'am. That's the body which I observed and performed the autopsy on Mr. Tim Coggins on the 9th of October,
Okay.
1983.
And they are fair and accurate representations?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this time, State will tender States 3, 4, and 5.
No objection.
They're admitted?
Permission to publish, Your Honor.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Will that be by Elmo?
Yes.
Yeah, I would like to ask both sides to do that for publishing.
Okay. Publishing State's Exhibit 3. May he step down, Judge?
Yes, ma'am. Just make sure you speak up for the court reporter.
Yes, sir.
Do I have permission for him to step down? I will.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Judge. If you would, Mr. Tillman, this is, you said earlier in State's Exhibit 3, the body of Tim Coggins. Can you point to the jury where you were talking about that mud and?
It's in the hair area here, and I don't know specifically, and I don't see it in the photograph, but it was there.
It was back in
Yeah,
the back,
yeah.
okay? And what's around his head? Is that the slippage that you were talking about?
That is bloating, skin slippage, and early decomposition.
Okay. If you'll just stay there.
Okay.
If you can back up and, no, back up, no, towards the screen.
Yeah, you come this way.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's perfect, thank you.
And State's Exhibit 4, what is the jury looking at here, Mr. Tillman?
This is a group of approximately 7 stab wounds on the posterior surface, as well as 2 incised wounds making an X across this way.
Okay. And State's Exhibit 5.
This is the area of the hand. I discerned a blue ink tattoo of the word Barbara on the hand, as well as a number of defensive wounds and stab wounds on the left wrist, one exposing the radius here.
Okay, so this here,
Yes, ma'am.
and for the record, we're pointing to the middle and the up part of the top part, not up part, top part of the photo.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying is a defensive wound?
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk in detail, Mr. Tillman, about the wounds on Mr. Coggins.
Okay?
I think that's as wide as I can get, so I'll have to have, here we go. For the record, we'll be discussing State's Exhibit 2. You've mentioned lacerations and you've mentioned stab wounds. Can you explain to, and defensive wounds, explain to the jury here, what are you talking about? When you say a laceration, what do you mean?
Okay. I'm going to be discussing 3 types of wounds, basically. Laceration, stab wound, abrasions, and then really 4, an incised wound. Here's the difference. If you're at home and you trip over a stool or something and your head hits something like a wooden table, it may split the skin, it's tearing of the skin. That's a laceration. If you are cut with a knife, razor blade, that's an incised wound. If you are punctured with an object, whether it be a knife, piece of metal, whatever, that's a stab wound or a puncture wound. So, and the abrasion, of course, is just the abrading of the skin, breaking it with small hemorrhage underneath.
Okay, and what can abrasions be caused from?
Any type of pressure that breaks the skin and causes underneath hemorrhage.
Okay, could it be caused by dragging?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I note on your diagram, State's Exhibit 2, you don't note abrasions. Were the abrasions all over the body?
It's really kind of hard to tell. There were so many of them, it kind of randomly dispersed, but ubiquitous throughout the surface of the body.
So really too many abrasions to
Right,
count?
yeah.
Okay. Starting with the head here, I might need to zoom in a little bit. Can you explain the injuries that you noted on Tim's head?
I don't know if the jury can see the numbering system here. There you go, that helps. Okay. On the frontal portion of the skull, here in the frontal region, I've got 3 lacerations. First is located 4 inches below the top of the head and lying in the anterior midline, measuring 5/8 of an inch by approximately 3/8 of an inch. The second laceration is located just left lateral to the, which means on this side, this is the midline, this is left lateral to the anterior midline, and that would be this, wound 2. And then there is a third wound that is lateral to the right of the midline that is centered approximately 4 inches below the top of the head and 1.5 inches to the right of the anterior midline, measuring 1 inch by approximately 3/8 of an inch. Then I noticed in the eyes that they were swollen. There was a large number of maggot activity. Then there is a 4th wound that is a laceration located at the left lateral canthus of the left eye. There is a 5th wound underneath the infraorbital ridge here. That's a laceration, and it's about 1.25 inches by 3/8 of an inch. So that pretty much takes care of the front. On the back, there were 3 lacerations that we can talk about for the head. There are 3 lacerations located with the back of the head. Again, lacerations means it is pressure against the skull. It's not a cut.
And I think you explained it to the
Yeah.
jury earlier as maybe hitting something.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
And let's see, then I reflected the scalp during this process. And that's called the galea, and you look underneath that, and I saw the hemorrhage from these lacerations, but there were no fractures to the skull. All right.
Should we move on to the neck area?
Yep. Then we'll go down to the neck region, where there's two incised wounds. The first begins in the left lateral midline, continues across the anterior midline. This is number 7, and continues for a total length of approximately 4 inches. The second is just superior to the first and extends across the anterior midline.
Okay, I think you call those an incised wound.
That's correct. Those
What-
are knife cuts or sharp object cuts.
Okay, so it could be a knife.
Yes.
Probably most commonly you've seen as a knife.
Right.
Okay. And on the back side of the neck,
There is, number 9 is a stab wound associated, this is a stab wound associated with the posterior aspect of the neck on the left lateral side. And it's about 1 inch by 1 1/4 inches.
okay. Moving to the chest and torso area of Tim.
Number 10 is an important wound because it stabbed into the chest and went into down through the 4th intercostal space between the rib, between the 4th and 5th rib, and perforated into the superior portion of the inferior lobe of the right lung.
Okay, so that would puncture his lung.
That's correct.
Okay. What would that cause, a puncture to the lung?
Well, first of all, it can cause a pneumothorax where the lung collapses. Also can cause a lot of bleeding, and it can cause almost drowning on the blood as it seeps into the pleural of the lung.
Okay. Wound 11 and wound 12.
All right, 11 and 12. These are linear incised wounds, again, 10.5 inches below the top of the right shoulder. And basically, they kind of cross like this, and they are just incised wounds.
Okay. I'm going to go back to State's Exhibit 3 here. Can you see those noted on State's Exhibit 3?
Right here and right there.
So an X, if you will.
I'm sorry?
Kind of like an X.
Yes, that's
For the
correct.
record.
Yes.
Mhm. And for the record, that's on the left side of the photo. Right?
Okay.
The front of his legs.
Yes, on the legs, we've got, there's a stab wound on the medial aspect of the right leg at the area of the patella, which is just the kneecap area of the leg. Then there are 3 slight stab wounds located, actually 4, series of 4 stab wounds located on the lateral aspect of the lower thigh at the left patella. It would be these areas.
And for the jury, the patella is
The kneecap.
The kneecap. So you have 5 stab wounds to the kneecap.
Yep.
Could this have affected Tim's mobility?
It could, yes.
Could you explain to the jury how?
Well, basically, if you have a knee injury, it's going to affect your mobility. I think it would be common sense. You know, if you're cutting muscles that tend to enhance the flexibility of the knee or the movement of the knee, anything damaging that's going to impair mobility.
Moving to the back,
On the posterior surface, there are 7 stab wounds, and again, 2 of these perforate into the thoracic cavity posteriorly and go into the left lung.
okay,
And then again, there are incised wounds of an X. Let me double check that. I want to make sure that's incised and not a laceration. Okay. Incised wounds.
okay.
Yeah.
And that's what you were explaining
Yeah.
earlier, is a sharp object,
Right.
essentially, I guess, slashing, would that be?
Yes.
Okay, appropriate. All right, so you have these 2, I think you were saying, and for the record, we're referring to the top 2 red
Yeah.
markings here. Those were stab wounds that would have punctured the lungs?
Yes.
Okay, so how many stab wounds punctured Tim Coggin's lungs?
We've got the 2 we just described here, and then on the chest, these were on the left lung, and this was on the right lung. So both lungs are punctured.
And I believe you said earlier that would cause his lungs to fill up with blood.
Yes.
Okay. Let's look at, well, before we move there, State's Exhibit 4. Are these the groupings of stab wounds that you've designated as number 19?
Yes, that is correct.
And that's the incised wound. And for the record, when I say that.
Crossing the X here.
Okay, so it is in the form of an X?
Yes.
Okay. Numbers 14, 13, and 15.
Those are defensive type wounds, with 15 being the one that's lacerated the arm you saw earlier, where you saw the lettering of Barbara. It exposed the bone, the radius there on that wrist. That's what 15 is.
Okay. Tell the jury, what's a defensive wound? What are you, when you say that, what does it mean?
Basically, if you're being attacked and you're trying to fend off an attacker, you usually, if you don't have any weapon and they have a weapon, you're going to normally raise your hand to defense off any attack they're doing. So any wounds that are generally on the arms or hands can be contributed to defensive wounds in most instances.
Were you able, in State's Exhibit 5, with all of these wounds and the defensive wounds and everything we're looking at, were you able to determine what type of weapon may have been used?
At this point, I may have to interpose an objection. There was nothing in his report about the type of weapon or an exact type of weapon used. That's not an opinion we expected him to give. It's not in his report, Sean.
I think if he can give his opinion.
I've not seen his report. Could I review it?
Sure. I don't recall if it's in there or not.
If he has an opinion in that regard, I'm willing to allow it, as he has described the types of wounds.
Thank you, Judge.
There is in the report, there is a description of one of the stab wounds. I want to try to find it for you. I just had it. It showed the inferior ridge of the stab wound as being sharp margins and the upper being rounded. This indicates that it is a single edge blade as opposed to a double edge or a serrated blade.
Okay. In your diagram, you have groupings of injuries, but in total, how many injuries did you note to Timothy Coggin's body?
Well, obviously, as y'all can see, there's a large number of injuries, but if you put them all together, I would give you a number of around 30, at least 30 types of injuries to this body.
Okay. What was your cause of death?
Multiple stab wounds to the chest and abdomen.
And manner of death?
Homicide.
These multiple stab wounds to the chest and the back, Mr. Tillman, would this have been a painful event?
As I mentioned, the perforation of the intercostal spaces, the intercostal nerves are extremely sensitive. You know, anybody that's had broken ribs, how painful that is. And so there's going to be pain involved, yes.
Okay. And Timothy Coggins, do you know how long it might have taken him to die?
It's really difficult to say exactly, but you know, it could be 15 minutes. It could be a little longer, maybe.
So could he have bled out from the blood filling up his lungs, or losing blood from his body, or both?
And drowning.
Okay,
in the blood
okay. So all of these
are factors.
are factors. I don't have anything else. Thank you, Mr. Tillman.
You may cross.
Mr. Jackson, do you need that? I'll leave it there.
Mr. Tillman, you stated, I'll come up here and kind of look at your diagram here, that a lot of these injuries to the front of the face and to the back of the head were lacerations.
That's correct, sir.
And a laceration, you said, could be from an object striking. Could that be some sort of club or stick or something like that striking?
It's possible. I saw no pattern of a instrument on the body, but it's certainly a possibility.
So you couldn't say exactly what
That's correct.
caused it, but it's possible that's from a blunt object
Yes,
striking.
that's correct.
You said that one of the injuries you were able to see or make an opinion that that wound was caused by a single-edged blade.
Yes, sir.
And it was not serrated.
It didn't look serrated
Did
to
not
me.
look that it would be serrated. Okay. You were never given any type of particular weapon by the state to look at to try to see if it matched these wounds, or
No, sir, I did not.
it was the weapon or anything like that?
That's correct, sir, I did not.
And you don't have any idea the motivation behind all this? You're the how guy, not the why guy, correct?
That's correct, sir.
Okay. Just a second. Mr. Tillman, when you received the body, it had, you said it had some clothing along with it.
Yes, sir.
Do you recall, did you make any notations or recall the condition of the pants, the pockets, anything like that?
I do not remember that. I didn't describe it. I think the clothing was collected and given to our trace evidence folks.
So y'all's job, when y'all get a body and it has clothing or something with it, you take that and move it to the section that's going to test it.
That's correct.
And after that, you don't have any responsibility for holding on to it or doing anything with it after that?
No, sir.
Okay. Just a second. I don't think we have anything else from you.
Can you redirect?
Yes, very briefly, Judge. The decomp, the state of the body, could that have hindered any weapon identification as to a specific type of weapon?
It certainly could. That's why I don't only described that in one of the wounds that I saw a sharper margin on the inferior aspect. And by that, if you take a knife, and the top would be the superior, the blade portion that's sharp would be the inferior. So if the inferior portion of the wound is sharp, that means it's cut the skin and is sharp. And because the blade at the top is not sharp or wide or whatever, you see more of a rounding area as opposed to a sharp edge.
Okay. And were you able to, I think in your report it says it's 1 1/4 inch or something along those
Right,
lines?
right.
Okay. So we're not talking about a large
No, sir.
object here. And the lacerations on the head that opposing counsel refers to in your diagram, he mentioned a club and asked you if it could be caused by a club. Could this have been caused by a head dragging on the ground
Yes.
behind a motor vehicle of some sort?
Yes, because it would be pressure against the skin which causes the lacerations.
Okay, and it might be caused by rocks and things
Yeah.
like that? Okay. I don't have anything else. Thank you.
Can you cross?
Just a couple. Mr. Tillman, the example you gave the jury, however, about a laceration was like falling down and kind of hitting your head on one of these mini benches that's in here.
Right.
Correct? And just want to make sure I had it covered. The blade that you're talking about, the one wound you were able to look at and give some sort of opinion, your opinion was, it was a single-sided blade, not double-sided.
Yeah, that's correct.
And you saw no evidence that it was serrated in any way?
I did not. On that blade edge, no.
That's all the question I
You may come down. Thank you, sir.
May he be excused?
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You call your next witness, please.
We call Mr. Jesse Gates.
Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the hearing and trial of this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
You'll have a seat, please. Will you please state your name for the record?
Jesse W. Gates.
Good morning, Mr. Gates.
Good morning.
How do you know the Coggins family?
His great aunt used to live beside my mom.
When you say
And
his, I don't mean any.
Tim's great aunt used to live beside my mom, and that's how I got to know them.
Mr. Gates, let me take you back to the time around 1983. Were you involved in a relationship with one of the members of the Coggins family?
Yes, it was Harriet.
And at that time, where were you employed?
Spalding County Sheriff Department
And in what capacity?
as a deputy.
And were you on the road? Were you a road deputy?
I was the road deputy.
Can you explain to the jury a little bit about the racial climate of Spalding County back in 1983?
Well, it wasn't good. With me, I was always out front of being just people was people. But it was, the climate was, it was terrible.
Was there activity in Spalding County by the Ku Klux Klan?
Oh, yes.
Were there,
Yes.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Good.
Were there parades?
Yes. It was two that I knew of.
Were you aware of any Klan rallies in Spalding County?
I'm going to have to object. I'm not sure of the relevance of this at this time.
No, it's relevant as to motive of the crime. This was a,
Well, there's nothing that's associated with this, I get with Mr. Gebhardt. In general, I think this is general information that's not relevant to this particular case.
Your Honor, we'll be able to tie it in through other witnesses throughout the state's case.
Overruled. Go ahead.
Are you aware of any Klan rallies during this time, Mr. Gates, in the Spalding County area?
Yes.
Now, let's talk specifically about October 7th, 1983. Do you recall that day?
Yes.
And would that have been a Friday or Friday evening?
Now, I can't precisely say that it was a Friday, a Thursday, or either a Friday.
Do you recall seeing Timothy Coggins around that time?
Yes.
Okay, where did you see him at?
I saw him on Camp Creek and Pool Road.
Do you recall what time of day it was when you saw him?
It was between 10:30 and 12 o'clock at night.
And were you on duty at that time?
No, no. I had came from a movie. Had took a friend of mine to the movies.
And did Tim stop you?
Well, I had went, let me back up a minute. I had went, my daughter's mom had called me to get a gallon of milk. And I said, okay, on my way back, I'll stop at Kroger's and get that gallon of milk. So I went and got the milk, came over to Camp Creek and Pool Road. Exit my vehicle, went down to the apartment, and gave my daughter's mom the milk. Came back to my vehicle. Tim was on the corner of Pool Road there. And he started screaming, Jesse, 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 could I get a ride? I said, who in the world is this? Calling my name. And he started running to me. And so I said, Tim, oh, that's Tim. He said, give me a ride. I said, okay, where are you going? Going to the club. I said, all right. You're going to the club? Yes, sir. And I said, you got to ditch it? He had a sack. I can remember that he had a sack in his hand. I said, you got to ditch that sack. So he turned it up, and then he ditched the sack. Because I do not eat and drink in my cars. Don't do that. And so he got in the car, so we started. We started up Pool Road. Moved over to Hill Street. Then that's when he started talking about this Caucasian girl. And I said, now Tim, if I told you once, I told you twice. You need to be careful about dating Caucasian women in Griffin. And he said, Mr. Jason, you just old-fashioned. I said, okay.
Can I stop you right there?
Yes, sir.
Why did that concern you, that Tim was in a relationship with a Caucasian woman?
Because all the things I have seen doing my employment with the sheriff department, it concerned me dearly. And I had explained to him, if you're gonna date a Caucasian girl, you need to go to Atlanta. And I told him that because it was accepted up there. But a lot of people in Spalding County did not accept that. And I knew that.
What was Tim's demeanor? Did he appear to be under the influence or intoxicated?
No.
You indicated that he was going to the club. What club was he going to?
Okay, let me draw them a picture. On Hill Street, you got 3 clubs. 3 clubs. And the clubs that he was going to was the People's Choice. The People's Choice.
Okay. What kind of club was that, Mr. Gates?
It was just a regular club.
Was it common for Caucasian people to go to this club?
No. No, it wasn't.
Do you recall what time you dropped Tim Coggins off at the club?
Now, it might have been right before 12. Because I can remember he asked me for some money. He said, I need some money. I said, oh, you must be broke. And he said, yes, sir. So I gave him $5. And I said, now, you get you something? Because he told me he was hungry. I said, well, you get you something to eat. Now, if I find out that you done spent this money on something else, you're going to have to suffer the consequences. You know what that is. And as he exited the vehicle there, when we got to the People's Choice, people everywhere. I mean, all over the place. And so I told him, I said, Tim, be careful. And then all of a sudden, I see 3 white guys standing in front of the club. And as a police officer, things like that seem strange to you, because Caucasians did not visit that club.
Was that the last time that you saw Tim Coggins?
The last time I saw him, he was posted up in our squad room. That was the last time that I saw
Was that
a
the
picture.
Was that the last time that you saw him alive?
That was the last time I saw him alive.
Mr. Gates, when did you, or when were you made aware of the death of Timothy Coggins?
I can't. I don't recollect when I was made aware, and I tried to brainstorm to see whether or not that I went to the scene. I think it was on a Sunday morning. But I can't. After 35 years, I don't really know.
But at some point you were made aware that Timothy Coggins had been murdered, correct?
Yes, sir.
Were you made aware of the location of
Yes,
where
sir.
the body was found?
Yes, sir.
You recall that location?
I don't know the specific road, but it was off of 1941 highway
Was that here in Spalding County?
in Spalding County.
Did you go to the location of the body?
I don't want to. I think they gave me that call, but I can't really say positive.
Do you recall going to Carey's mobile home park after the body was found?
Several times.
Why did you do that?
I guess it's because of my training. When a criminal commits a crime like that, usually that percentage of that crime is usually connected to some people in that area.
What do you mean by that?
Your Honor, I guess there's a lot of speculation, and there's whether this is an expert opinion that he's trying to give. I would object if it is.
I'm not tendering him as an expert judge, I'm just asking him, I can attempt to lay a foundation.
Good.
Mr. Gates, how long have you been in law enforcement?
Now we're at that time.
Back in 1983, how long have you been in law enforcement at that time?
8 years.
Had you participated in criminal investigations in 1983 and up to 1983?
Yes, sir.
Do you recall approximately how many?
Hundreds.
Did you receive any training in regards to criminal investigations?
Yes,
back
sir.
in 1983. Do you recall what classes you took or how many classes you took?
Hundreds.
Did you take classes in crime scene investigation?
We had a couple. I had a couple.
Did you take any classes on preservation of evidence?
Preserving evidence?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Based on your training and experience, why did you feel like you needed to go to Carey's mobile home park?
Because of my training. Basically because of the training.
And what do you mean?
And I wanted to find out the particulars on who killed.
Your Honor, again, I think we're in that opinion,
Well-
which an expert foundation hadn't been laid, nor were we given any indication that Mr. Gates was going to be proffered to testify as an expert.
Well, where in proximity is this mobile home park in regard to the location of the body?
It's about a mile. It's about a mile, Your Honor.
Any other population centers around that area?
The only close one is across 4119 over there on Teeman Road.
Okay, you can go ahead.
Were you asked by the sheriff's office to help investigate the case?
No, I did it basically on my own because we had investigators.
When you were conducting your investigation, were you trying to develop leads out of the black community?
Yes,
Were you able to do so?
yes, the ones that wanted to talk.
Your Honor, again, I know there's been some asking of questions that seem to be an attempted qualification as an expert, but I haven't heard that we've gotten there yet.
Judge, I'm not trying to qualify him as an expert. Goes more towards the investigation and how it was conducted.
Okay.
It's relevant.
I think you can keep going for the time being.
Mr. Gates, did you pass on the information that you recovered or that you developed to investigators assigned to this case?
Yes,
Back in 1983, did you feel like the information that you were providing to investigators were acted on?
in my personal opinion, no.
Why do you feel that way, Mr. Gates?
I can't really say. But I just don't think that we done our jobs.
Were you ever told to stop investigating the case?
I was told to stop when they brought the GBI in. I was also told that I was a road deputy, which at the time I was a supervisor, and that the GBI would handle this case.
The case was closed fairly quickly from when it was opened up. Is that correct, Mr. Gates?
I can't say when it was closed. I can't say when it was closed. But I did know what the community was saying about it.
What was that?
Your Honor, I would object to any hearsay if we're getting into that.
Sustain.
Mr. Gates, did it appear that there was not a lot of sharing of information between investigators and agencies investigating this case?
That's what it appears to me.
That's all my questions at this witness.
We're going to take a short break before cross. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take about a 10-minute recess. Do not discuss the case. The Chief Bailiff, Ms. Purefoy, is going to come back to see you in the jury room and get your lunch orders. And after you get those placed, we'll resume with the cross-examination this week. Okay, we'll take a 10-minute recess. The jurors may retire to the jury room. You may begin your cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Gates.
Good morning, how are you?
Hi, my name's Walter Lee. I'm one of the attorneys representing Mr. Gebhardt in this case.
Yes, sir.
Back in 1983, do you recall giving a statement to law enforcement, people that you worked with at the time?
No, I can't remember.
You don't recall on October 11th giving a statement to the GBI? Well,
Oh,
Phillips.
no, the GBI, yes,
Yes, sir.
yes.
And I'm sorry, Agent Green, I think, and.
Yeah, the
Sergeant
GBI,
Yes,
right.
Okay. And you remember Sergeant Phillips, you don't remember him being there as well? With Spalding County's Clint Phillips?
I know Clint Phillips, but I can't remember him being with us.
Okay. You just don't remember?
I just don't remember.
I understand. And do you recall in that statement that you told him that you were off duty traveling north on Hill Street when you came upon Mr. Coggins at a car wash?
No, no, that's not true.
Okay. You don't recall telling them that, or you wouldn't have told them that?
I wouldn't have told him that.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I'm just trying to clarify, I guess. I just.
Oh,
wanted to-
okay, okay.
And so you don't recall telling them he was in front of the car wash, and that you stopped and gave him a ride to the People's Choice Club?
No,
Okay. And you don't recall telling him that you then let him out in front of the club and you drove on home?
I let him out in front of the club, that's true,
Okay. And then you went home?
that's true.
Okay. And do you recall you saying that it was between 12 and 12:30 a.m.?
No, it was between 10:30 and 12 o'clock in that area,
Okay.
that I can recollect.
Yes, sir, and that's all I'm asking
Yeah.
is what you can recall.
Yes, sir.
But you don't recall telling them it was between 12 and 12:30 a.m. on October the 8th?
No. 35 years ago? No.
I understand. So, do you recall telling them back in 1983 all the details, I guess, that you just shared with us a few moments ago?
Yes,
Okay, so you told them that you came upon him, you told them about the sack of food, and you told them
well,
about.
it wasn't a sack of food. It was a bottle, it was a can, and a brown paper bag.
A can and a brown paper bag?
So it can-
Inside,
in-
Oh,
inside a brown paper bag.
okay, so sort of what folks would carry around the alcoholic drinks at the time, is that right?
That's true.
Oh, and I'm asking you, you correct me if I'm
Yeah,
wrong.
well, that's true.
I've seen it on TV, I guess, people carry around a bottle or a can
Yes.
in a paper
Now,
bag.
I will add this to it, is that I didn't know what was in that paper bag.
And I understand that, I guess that would have just been something common, that if you were drinking in public, you might conceal it with a paper bag, is that correct?
That's true.
Okay. You wouldn't have any need to conceal a Coca-Cola can, right?
I wouldn't believe so.
But whether it was Coke or whether it was alcohol, you didn't allow it in your car, right?
That's true.
Okay. And so you told him to get rid of it?
I told him to ditch it.
Okay. And his aunt lived beside your mom. I
His-
think that's how you knew them?
His great aunt lived beside my mom.
Yes, sir. And so that's how you knew them, and you were involved somewhat with Harriet Coggins, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Harriet being Tim's sister, right?
That's true.
Okay. And you were in law enforcement at the time, and you were not asked to take part in this investigation, is that correct?
That's true.
As a road deputy, would you have normally been asked, I guess, to take part in the investigation, or would there have been investigators with the investigations division that did that?
We usually do the initial report, and we would turn it over to the investigators.
Right. But you
The
weren't.
the change of command.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
But you weren't there and on duty and involved when the body was discovered and reported to law enforcement, is that correct?
I was on duty. Yes, I was on duty.
Okay, and were you one of the initial responding folks out to the scene of where the body was found?
That's true.
You were there?
That I can recollect that I was, but I can't be for certain.
Okay. So then did you write a report and then turn that over to the investigations division?
Wrote the initial report.
You wrote the initial report?
That's true.
Okay.
If I can, see, we're talking about 35 years,
Yes, sir.
and I have brainstormed my brain ever since I got that subpoena to try to find out whether or not I was the initial officer in writing that report, but it's hard to say and hard to be truthful to this jury to say that I did.
Yes, sir.
So I wouldn't want to lie to them. You see, so I don't really know.
Okay, so you think you could have written?
I
the
think I
report
could have.
about your-
I think I could have written it, but like I say, I'm not for sure.
And would it be fair to say, and you tell me if I'm, would it be fair to say that because of your personal involvement with the family, then perhaps that would be a reason you wouldn't have been asked to participate in the investigation?
So keep in mind now, I was a supervisor,
Yes,
a corporal,
yes,
and I was a road deputy,
yes.
and we had investigators to handle things like that. And usually the deputies, we usually do the initial report, and those investigators will pick it up.
Right.
Okay,
And therefore, you would not have been asked under any circumstances to participate in the investigation?
that's true.
Okay. So that explains that, correct? And you recall, so back in '83, you would have, had you been asked, or had they written it down appropriately, you would have told them you came upon Tim Coggins at the corner of Pool Road and Camp Creek? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And would you have given them the details of taking milk home? Your daughter some milk?
That's correct.
Okay. And so if they didn't write that down, that would have been information you gave and just would have been excluded from the report if it's not in their report, right?
That's correct.
And you would have told them about the sack in his hand and about the $5 that you had given him?
That's correct.
And you testified to Mr. Coker that you had dropped him off right before, would have been right before 12?
Right before 12, somewhere in that area.
Is it fair to say somewhere around midnight?
That's true, correct.
Give or take?
Give or take a few minutes.
And is it fair to say you weren't looking at your watch and this was not something out of the ordinary at the time? Is that correct?
That's correct.
It only became important later because obviously of the next day or so that you found out what had happened.
Well, it was several days.
Right.
Right.
Oh,
That
in the
had happened.
next
And
2
that's when the whole thing hit me. That's when it hit me square in the face.
Right.
Yeah, and you're correct.
When you found that out, then it all of a sudden made those details more important, right?
That's true.
And something you would have shared with did you make your own report, in your own independent investigation? Did you make a report of what you investigated and the results of it?
Well, when they brought the GBI in there, we had been passing those our investigation that we had already looked into. And when the GBI came in, we was told, look, we got the GBI, And usually when we reached out to the GBI, they had the resources.
Right.
And so they told us, do your regular job.
So the GBI was called in immediately, were they not?
That's correct.
Okay, but you said you continued on an investigation, and did you make a report of that? Your
I did it on my own time once they had told us to stop. I did a lot of things on my own time. I would go up there and walk that field, but I never went out into that trailer park. I did that when I was in the patrol car.
Oh, okay.
So I did a lot of things on my own because it hurt so bad until you would ask somebody, hey, what are you all doing about Mr. Coggins' case? Nobody knew nothing.
And I'll jump to this question. Is it fair to say you don't believe anybody cared that much? And I know that's hard when you look back and you have to think.
So as a professional, they didn't care that much. Now, I mean, when you are a professional, and you want to get something done, you do it. You're getting paid for it.
Yes. And let me ask you.
And that's what I told Mr. Coker.
Right. And let me follow up with you on that. If you're professional and you care and you want to solve a murder, you preserve evidence that's found at the crime scene, right?
That is true.
Right. And you weren't responsible for that, but other people would have been. Is that correct?
I would be responsible for it, and the other people, if I had collected some evidence, which I had collected a lot of things in that field area when I did that grit search, if you know what that is.
I am familiar with that.
Yeah.
You collected evidence then?
Went around and I collected like pieces, just any shred of evidence, like things things that might have been out of place.
Right. And did you keep and preserve what you had found, the evidence you found?
I can't say that I turned it in,
Right.
but I did pass a lot of stuff on. But I mean, after 35 years, and I'm not making no excuses for it,
Yes.
but I just can't reach back that far, and I don't really know.
Right. Did anybody tell you at the time, you're not the primary investigator, and therefore let us collect the evidence?
We was told that when the GBI came in there.
That's what
I
you're
was told. Yeah, I was told.
So basically, so your collecting of the evidence was done that same day that the body was found?
No.
You did it later?
Yes. Now, what we were talking about evidence.
Right.
I'm not talking about what you would call solid evidence, just things that you noticed that where the body was laying, like weeds moved, things of that nature, which they had already knew that.
Okay. So you noticed things, you didn't necessarily collect things, or?
That's correct.
Okay. So there would have been nothing for you to preserve during this time?
Not really. But now, there again, I can't really say.
Yes. So you don't know that you may have had some pieces of physical evidence that you kept and would have had for some period of time thereafter?
Again, I don't really know.
Do you recall if there's anything that could have been tested over the years or more recently since technology has advanced?
No.
Okay. You took a lot of crime scene investigation courses, did you say?
We had in-service trainings.
Okay. In-service trainings means there at the sheriff's department?
Right, when the post comes down and they give those trainings.
Right, and some of that was on crime scene investigations?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And in that, in your training as a crime scene investigator, that's one of the most important things that is taught, is the collection and the preservation of evidence. Is that correct?
That's true.
Okay. And then let me, and I apologize, I don't know the logistics of the corner of Pool Road. How far is that to the People's Choice Club? Can you estimate from there?
About 2.6 miles.
Okay. And was, when you saw Mr. Coggins, was he standing or was he already walking in that direction?
I did not see Mr. Coggins when I came around Camp Creek.
Yes, sir.
When I dropped the milk off and I came back, that's when I heard him screaming, "Mr. Jesse, Mr. Jesse, Mr. Jesse."
And he wasn't.
So he wasn't really standing when I saw him
Right. Well, he wasn't screaming in distress. He was screaming to get your attention.
to get a ride.
Okay. Because he wanted to ride, obviously. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. And then you, once you got to the club, right around midnight, on the 7th into the 8th, either a little before or a little after, you dropped him off and he asked you for money.
That's correct.
Okay. And again, what did he tell you what the money was for?
Well, he told me he was hungry.
Okay. All right. And then you specifically told him to spend it on food. Is that fair?
That's correct.
Okay. Because you thought he might spend it on something else.
Well, the purpose was to give him the money for the food.
Yes. I understand. And
But now, that was the purpose.
yes. Did you have any, let me go back. At the time this happened, how long had you known Tim? Had you known him all his
Oh,
life?
God. Basically all his life.
Okay. So you were very familiar with him around Griffin, is that fair?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And were you familiar, did you ever know him to be involved in drugs?
No, not to my knowledge.
How often would you have seen him, do you know?
Just to estimate, probably two, maybe 2 times a week.
Couple
I was
times?
seeing him in the street.
Okay. And you would see him, did you necessarily socialize with him?
Oh yeah,
Okay,
great guy.
you understand?
Oh, he would pick me out.
Yeah,
I mean, he was just, the guy was a great guy.
right. But you had no information or no knowledge of him being involved with drugs?
No,
Is that what you're saying?
now not around, I'm saying not around me. That I didn't know.
And that's all I'm asking you, that's.
Yes, sir.
fair.
Yes, sir.
It's not in your knowledge.
Yes,
right?
sir.
Okay. And there was a discussion on the way to the People's Choice Club about Tim dating, seeing some involvement with a white person, white female.
Yep, with a Caucasian lady.
Did he bring this up to you?
He brought it up to me.
Okay, and I guess in what, just the fact that he was just saying it or bragging about it, how did you take that idea?
Well, let me see how it all got started. He told me, he said, "I've got about one of the most prettiest girls you ever want to see." And I told him, I don't doubt it. He told me, that she was a Caucasian girl. Hazel blue eyes, brown hair. And I said, oh, you're talking about a brunette. I guess that's what it is.
Right.
He said, yep. And I told him, I said, brother, you better be careful if we done had this conversation before. He said, but Mr. Gates, you got to understand. Well, okay. Okay, that's fine. And I always looked at it this way, is that people are people.
Yeah. And you specifically remember the hazel eyes and brown hair?
That's what he told me. Basically that's what he told me.
Okay. Did he indicate to you that he was going to meet this young lady at the People's Choice Club that evening?
No.
So it
No.
was just a general conversation?
That was just a general conversation, and that's how it ended.
Right.
That's all it was, and I instructed him, and I told him, and it wasn't the first time that I told him to be careful.
Had he ever mentioned the hazel-eyed brunette girl before? Or was that the first time you heard that?
Well, now I've heard several ladies that he mentioned to me,
Right.
but I guess he was hung up on that particular one
At that particular time?
at that particular time.
Right. And did you ever go to the People's Choice Club and?
Yeah, to break up fights.
I understand.
Yeah, I've been up there several times to break up fights.
I understand. And, I mean, it was a club, people were drinking and dancing. And a lot of
Oh,
people
yeah,
did.
yeah. Yes,
And
sir.
When you got there, that particular evening, there were a lot of people there, right?
Yes, sir.
And I mean, when you say a lot, parking lot full, people milling all about.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And what stood out to you was 3 white people in the parking lot at the club.
They wasn't in the parking lot. They was standing in front of the club.
And I apologize, I ain't trying to put words in your
Okay,
mouth.
yeah, I understand. I understand you. I get you. I understand you.
So they were standing again, where, would you tell me that?
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is Hill Street. This is the club. If you can just imagine, they were standing in front of the club,
Okay. So they were close to the door, is that?
close to the door.
Okay. And that would have been when you dropped him off at around midnight?
When I dropped him off.
Okay.
Correct.
And did you watch Tim go in the club?
At the time when I gave him the money and he exited my vehicle, he walked up to those 3 white guys. And I left, but I never did see him go into the club. I never did see that.
Okay, you saw him go to them,
Yes, sir.
and of course, he was going to the door, so he was going in the club, and they were at the
That-
door.
That's correct.
Okay. So you don't know specifically if he was going to conduct business or have conversation with them, or just going to them, to pass them, to go in the club?
Only thing I saw is him walk up to those guys, and that was it.
Okay. And did you document, or was anybody asked, you would have told investigators that back in 1983, is that correct?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so if nobody documented that,
But now,
that was because they didn't care enough to document it, is that what you're saying?
that's true.
Okay.
You're right.
Were you asked to view a photo lineup of the people that you had seen outside the People's Choice Club?
Not to my knowledge.
Any of them gray-headed?
I can't remember.
all the questions I have at this time. Thank you, Mr. Yates.
Any
Thank
redirection?
you.
No, Your Honor, he
Okay. Yes, Mr. Gates, you're free to go. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Call your next witness, please.
Mr. Coggins?
Mr. Coggins?
No, Talisa Coggins, she's right there on the bench.
Oh, okay.
Go and face me and raise your right hand. You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the trial of this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, sir, I do.
You'll have a seat. And if you'll speak into that middle microphone and state your name for the record.
Talisa Coggins,
Ms. Coggins, good morning.
good morning.
Will you tell the jury your relationship with Tim Coggins?
Timothy Coggins is my brother,
And how far apart in age were y'all?
2 years.
And there are a lot of siblings.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, how many siblings?
8.
All right. And so you and Tim were pretty close.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 6. And I'm going to ask you if you recognize it.
Yes, I do.
What is that?
My brother Timothy Coggins.
And is that a picture of him in life?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'll tender State's Exhibit 6.
It's admitted.
Permission to publish?
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about Tim.
Tim was very loving, he was very caring, and he was very funny, and he loved to dance, and he loved his family.
They love to dance.
Loved to dance.
Is it fair to say he liked to have a good time?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Did Tim have any issues associating with white people?
No.
Okay, tell the jury a little bit about that. What do you mean when you shook your head and you were adamant no? Tell them why.
Tim would make friends with anybody. It didn't matter the color. It didn't matter about anything. He was just like a very outgoing person, and if he meets you today, y'all would just have such a great time because he was just that funny. And he loved to make people laugh, and he was not ashamed of to meet a stranger.
So he liked people in general.
He loved people, yeah.
All right. Did you ever go to the People's Choice and see Tim there?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you recall one occasion in particular where you saw Tim dancing with someone that struck you as unusual?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Tell the jury about that.
I remember him dancing with this white lady at the club, and well, to me, I felt like with him being such a great dancer, she would ask him to show her how to dance, and I do remember her being there.
Okay. Do you remember her being there more than one time?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Do you remember how many times?
I give or take maybe 4 or 5.
Okay. And was she with Tim often when she would come to the club?
Well, I can't say often because I wasn't there often
Right.
myself, but the time I was there, I do recall seeing them dancing.
Did Tim ever tell you who she was?
I never asked, but I do recall the very first time I seen her sitting at the bar, and the very first time I seen her talking with Tim, I didn't like it. I didn't feel comfortable with it.
Tell the jury why you didn't feel comfortable.
Well, mainly because it was to me, this is just my opinion. When you see a white person come to an all-black club, and if they ain't like came with somebody and just pop up by themselves, to me it raised a red flag.
Did you remember anything about her hair or body or anything like that?
Yeah, I remember her being just about my height, and I can't tell you exactly about her face, but I know she had long brown hair.
Okay. When was the last time you saw your brother alive?
The last time I saw him alive was on a Friday night. We was at the club, and it was crowded as always. And I remember I was going to the bathroom, and I remember I can hear the people in the crowd saying, "He's looking for Tim." And I happened to look back, and I said, I looked and I saw this tall white guy with, he had a cap on his head, no facial hair looked like, and he had on a white t-shirt and overalls. So when I looked and seen that, I'm trying to get through the crowd because I want to know what he wanted with my brother. So me making my way through the crowd, trying to get there to see what, what was going on. And by the time I got there and got outside, they was gone.
Okay. So you don't know where Tim went?
No, ma'am, I don't.
When did you find out that he died?
When they was passing a picture around, and my sister immediately know who he was.
Okay.
And that's when we knew, because it was like maybe a day or two we haven't seen him, so we weren't thinking he was dead.
Okay. So it was a day or two after you saw him?
Yes, ma'am.
Is this the picture that they showed you? I'm sorry. Is that the one that they showed you of Tim? Okay. And I'm going to publish it to the jury, so if you don't want to see it, don't look at the TV. Were you able to recognize your own brother from this photo?
No.
You couldn't tell who it was? Who passed it around to you?
I can't remember. It was it was just a detective that was passing it around.
Okay. Were they trying to identify him?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. After Tim died, what happened? Did your family, anything happen to your family?
Well, we was all scared because we didn't know what happened, or who did it. But it was a lot of, we was all afraid.
Were you ever threatened?
I recall one night I was sitting at home while we was sitting watching TV, and a loud noise hit the front door, and it was a brick, and on the brick it said, "Hush, you're next."
I'm sorry, it said what?
It said, "Hush and shut up, you're next."
Okay.
And on another occasion, I say days later, we heard a loud noise and went out in the hallway, and it was a black dog that was neck cut saying, "You're next."
I'm sorry, just for the record, it was a black dog.
Black dog with his
cut off?
neck cut off saying, "You're next."
Okay, and it said you're next on it. Did investigators ever come talk to you?
No. This is the first time I ever said it.
Even though you were so close in age, investigators did not interview you?
No, ma'am.
And how did your family feel about law enforcement handling the case?
Felt like they just really didn't care. He was another black man dead.
Did you feel that the crime was racially motivated?
I didn't know at the time, but I just know my brother was dead, and I didn't know why.
They wouldn't even tell you what happened?
Nope.
Okay. I'm gonna show you what I'm gonna mark, just for identification. We won't tender at this time. State's Exhibit 7. I gotta turn it this way because I can't show it yet. Do you recognize that?
They look familiar to me, but like I said, I remember him having a pair of white shoes, but I can't quite say about the stripes on there.
But they look familiar to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and that's State's Exhibit 7.
Yes, ma'am.
What size shoe did Tim wear?
A size 10.
And when he would go to the club dancing, what would he typically wear?
He would wear tennis shoes mainly, but he
Okay.
did, mainly tennis shoes.
I guess that's because it was
Comfortable.
easier for him to dance in? Okay. And you recall that they were what color?
They was white,
Because you weren't in the microphones.
yeah.
All right. This question may sound strange, Ms. Coggins, but it's one that I have to ask. Was Tim Coggins a human being?
Oh, yeah. Yes, he was a human.
I don't have anything else for you, Ms. Coggins. Thank you.
Thank you.
You may cross.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Scott. Morning, Ms. Coggins.
Good morning, sir.
My name's Walker Lee. I represent the person that's certainly been accused in this case. And I've just got a few questions I would like to ask you to clarify some things because it's important to everybody.
Yes, sir.
And I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
So you and Tim were pretty close, is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes, sir.
And even though you did not give a statement or were not asked anything about it back then, you
Mhm.
have been interviewed about it since then, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and Agent Coleman here, he's interviewed you about it, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And, you know, they, like GBI folks do, they record those interviews, you knew that, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And, you talked about, going to the club that night, I guess it was October 7th, is that correct? The night that the last time you saw Tim?
The last time I saw him, yes.
Okay. And that, do you recall, would he have been wearing maybe some patent leather shoes with some holes in the top?
What color, sir?
I don't know, I guess I'm just distinguishing that sometimes if Mr. and Miss Dorsey had said that,
Objection.
Well, okay.
Objection, hearsay.
I withdraw that, I apologize. Would that have been something Tim would have normally or sometimes worn to the club?
He had a pair of shoes that was Stacey Adams. That was brown and light brown.
Okay. And like patent leather with holes at the top, is that fair to say?
I wouldn't say they wasn't pan leather. They was real Stacey Adams. I don't think Stacey Adams is pan leather.
Okay. And he would have had on a beige sweater, is that correct? And you correct me if I'm wrong, I ain't trying to put words in your mouth. Did you say a tan or beige sweater?
I can't really say what he had on. Like I said, I can't quite recall what he had on.
Okay.
Your Honor, we approach briefly.
Yes. Try to speak into this mic.
So you do not remember telling Agent Coleman here that Tim was wearing like a beige colored sweater and possibly a t-shirt under it and things like that?
Yes, I do. Yeah, you're right. I do.
Okay, and again, I ain't trying to, I
Yeah.
know it's been a while.
Yes,
I
it
know
has.
there's a lot going on, and you just tell me, you just tell me what you know, and I'm not gonna try to put words in your mouth. Is it fair to say that you also told Agent Coleman the truth that Tim was involved with drugs?
Well, I never say he was in. I never saw him really use drugs.
I understand. But you knew that he did drugs?
I heard of yes,
Okay, and you said that you knew that he did drugs every day?
possibly.
Okay. And you, I think when Mike Morris, Investigator Morris asked you, you said that he would pinch off other people's drugs. Is that correct?
Well, what I said was some people, if they would go get drugs for some people, they would pinch off of it.
Right, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess what that means is, if I don't have the money to buy drugs, but I do drugs, I'll set up a sale and take a portion of them as payment.
It's been known to be done, yes.
Okay, and you think, did Tim have a regular job back then, or was it just sort of odd job?
It wasn't a regular job, but he did do odds and ends job as well as work with my stepfather, who was a plumber.
Okay. You might not have enough money, I guess, to do drugs every day. Is that correct?
I would say yes.
Okay, so probably would have to take some in exchange for setting up a drug deal. Is that correct?
Well, I really can't say that would be correct, because like I said, I wasn't there. I never see my brother do drugs. So like I said, I've heard people do that, but I cannot say my brother did it because I wasn't there. I didn't see him do it.
And again, would you have told Agent Coleman that you knew that he did drugs and you knew he did them every day? Yes or no, you can recall. Do you recall?
No, I don't recall that.
Okay. And you were there that night. He was at the club, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And your brother Tim was in the club and he was dancing, is that correct?
Well, I don't think he was on the dance floor at that particular time. I don't think so. All I know is when I was going to the bathroom, and I could hear the people saying, "This white man looking for Tim." So when I turned around and see, who the white man, just see who it was. When I looked back and seen him, I seen Tim approaching him. And me trying to get through the crowd, trying to get there. Like I said, by the time I got there, they had got outside, they was gone.
Okay. But you recalled, and I apologize if I heard you wrong, you recall seeing him dancing with a white girl, is that correct?
Yeah. I have seen him dance with her.
And I'm just trying to, that night, did you recall seeing him dance with a white girl, or did you not see him with a white girl that night?
I don't recall her being there that night.
Okay. So, as far as you know, everything was normal that night at the club, at the People's Choice Club. Tim was there. He wasn't with a white girl. He wasn't dancing with a white girl. And nothing was out of the ordinary until a big white guy with overalls and a cap
And a white t-shirt.
and a white t-shirt, who was very tall,
Mm-hmm.
walked in the club, and Tim left with him.
Yes, sir.
Did you hear that white guy talk?
No.
Okay. Did you see him with Tim or talking to Tim?
No.
Okay. You were just told that that Tim had left with the big white guy with the overalls, cap.
Tim approached him, like I said, I'm still trying to get through the crowd so I can see my brother approaching to him. And like I said, whatever they was saying, I couldn't hear it. All I knew is they went out the door. And when I made my way through the crowd and I got there and went outside, they was gone.
And what time, is this something y'all did regularly? Growing up, we always had things that we did regularly. Did y'all go to the People's Choice Club sort of just every weekend or every other weekend?
Well, I had to go every other weekend because I had kids. So like I said, I can't speak for no one else, but as far as me, I went when I could go, when I could get a babysitter. That wasn't every weekend.
Okay. And did Tim normally take you to the club?
No, he have took me, but not to that club.
Okay. So he didn't normally go to the club with you and make sure you got home and stuff like that?
He have, like I said, not to that club. But again, like I said, he have made sure that we got home safe. Tim was a very protective person of his family, especially his sisters.
Do you remember about what time you would have gone that night, or?
Well, I would normally go myself like around 9 or 9:30.
Okay. And do you recall, and stay, I'm assuming, since you're not away from the kids, staying well into the evening?
What do you mean well into the evening?
Well, I mean midnight or 1 o'clock in the
Yeah,
morning? Or
yeah.
somewhere around in there. Not,
Yeah.
I've not watched the sun come up, but enough where you're having a good time and you're enjoying it.
Yes, I was.
And that would be something in the normal course of your visiting the People's Choice Club?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And, had you, but Tim did not go with you to the club? Is
Not
fair?
that night, no.
Okay. And so you saw him there, obviously sometime after you got there?
Yes, sir.
Do you, and again, I ain't trying to, was it when you walked in, was he already there, or did he come late?
He was already there when I got there.
Okay. And do you recall, did you talk to him, or?
Yeah, yeah, it was like, hi, how you doing? We hugged or whatever, and he just said, I always say, be careful. And I said, okay, you too.
Okay. And do you, I'm assuming everybody danced and was having a good time for some period of time, is
Yes,
that
sir.
correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then at some point then, Tim left, is what you testified to.
Mhm.
And I'm trying to, a couple hours later, is that fair to say, or you tell me about how long after?
How long after what?
About how long after you got there and maybe would Tim have left? If you can
I
tell
say
me.
maybe an hour and a half after I've gotten there. It wasn't, maybe about that long, yeah.
Okay. So if you got there about 9 or 9:30, then about, 10:30, 11?
Possibility.
Okay. It had gotten later on into the evening when Tim would have left.
Yes.
Okay. And again, I guess and when I say, the only out of place thing that you really saw would have been the white guy coming in the club.
Well, like I said, I didn't see him come in the club when they said the white guy was asking for Tim. But when I looked around and seen him standing there, that's when I seen him.
Okay. But I mean, I guess what I'm saying is that's the only thing unusual is him coming in, and would it have been, since Tim hung around mostly white people, then it wouldn't have been unusual for Tim to leave with this individual?
It wasn't unusual for me, but like I said, what didn't sit well with me was the fact that, this is just my opinion, I felt like when she first started coming to the club, I didn't like it, because I felt like something just didn't sit right. Because when a white person comes to a black person club, they either generally brought there with another black person. But she just showed up by herself. And like I said, after 3 or 4 times, me seeing her there, and it's just like all of a sudden this big white guy show up, so I'm thinking that's her husband. And that's what set the red flag for me.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I understand, and that's the conclusion, I guess. Is that what you were you ever given an identity of the white guy that came in the club?
I'm just gonna make sure we don't get any hearsay as to what someone might have told her.
Let's try to stay away from that.
Did you know of any identity do you know who the white guy was that came in the club?
No.
Okay. Did you inquire with other people as to who the white guy was that came in the club?
No.
You didn't ask?
No, sir.
And are you sure you didn't ask?
No. Who was I gonna ask? I mean, everybody knew Tim was a friendly person, so.
Okay. But I mean, in your interview with Agent Coleman, are you sure you didn't ask who that was that Tim left with or something?
Again, judges, this question is going to require her to testify as a hearsay. I think that's what the judge is trying to steer away from.
My question's trying to steer away from that as well, Judge. I just want to know, did she make the inquiry?
Did you make an inquiry?
Yes, I did, sir.
Okay.
Okay,
Move
so
on.
you did ask?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
That's an answer.
And again, well, I won't go back into that, but sometime after Tim was killed, your testimony was that your family received what you took to be threats, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And those were in the form of a T-shirt, is that correct?
No, the T-shirt wasn't a threat. The T-shirt was put on my stepfather's school bus. It was a bloody white T-shirt. That was placed on my stepfather's school bus.
And where was that school bus? Where would it have been parked? Do you remember back then?
Yeah, he always parked on the side of, we stayed right here on Solomon Street, and some apartments, and he would always park on the side right there.
And so, I mean, we had parked near where you lived, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so he found a bloody T-shirt?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Did you see that bloody T-shirt?
No, sir, I didn't.
Okay. And then, what was the other thing that you found with something that said hush on it?
It was a brick, and it was a dog with his neck cut off.
And so those were separate times after Tim was killed?
Yes, sir.
That there was a bloody T-shirt, there was a brick,
Yes,
that
sir.
I'm assuming had a note on it?
Yes, sir.
That said hush?
Hush, you're next, and the dog neck was cut off and said, you're next.
Was there a note on it or on the dog? or-
It was on both of them.
That's what I'm saying. Was it a note as something handwritten on?
Yes, it was handwritten saying, shut up, you're next. And on the dog, it had a thing around his neck with the writing on there saying, you're next.
Okay. So
I
it was-
witnessed those two
You
things.
did witness those, and it was something around the dog's neck that said, shut up or hush your next.
Mhm.
And were any of the rest, was anybody else in the family associated or dating or having a relationship with a white person?
Well, I have a cousin that's married to a white guy.
I understand that. In 1983, in the days right after this, was anybody in your family, was anybody else having a relationship or involved with a white person?
Like I said, in my immediate family or just outside, but just around in the other family.
In your immediate family?
Yeah, like I said, I have a cousin that's been married to a white man all her life.
So in 1983, she was married to a white man?
Well, I don't know if she was in the military at this time or if they was married, but like I said, I do recall her dating a white guy.
Where does she live? She live in Griffin?
Objection, relevant.
Yes, she does.
She lived in Griffin in 1983?
That's what I'm saying. I don't know if she was in the military at that time or not, but like I said, I do recall her dating and always have dated a white guy.
And this
From
is-
just hearsay of the family saying once I seen it for myself when I first met her husband, he was a white guy.
Was that in 1983?
I can't say it was that then or not.
So as far as you know, there may have been a cousin that was married at some point to a white person, but nobody else in your family was regularly associating or hanging out with white people. Is that?
I would hang out with him at school,
And,
but I wouldn't hang with him when I got home.
well, that's what I'm saying. And I apologize if I'm not being clear. It's just me then. Nobody was dating or having any sort of more than a social interaction with
Not that
white
I know
people.
of.
Is that correct?
No.
Okay. So you didn't have any idea why anybody'd be threatening you or your family, is that correct?
I had no idea, but after my brother had passed away, that's what I was thinking all this was coming from.
Yes, ma'am, I understand that. But as far as motivation, you didn't understand why anybody would be threatening you or
No.
your family?
No.
Okay. And certainly there would have been no reason for anybody to be threatening you or your family because you were having an intimate relationship with a white person, is that correct?
Well, it don't sound right, but no, it's
Right.
yes.
Okay. That's all the questions I have. Thank you, Ms. Goddard.
Any redirect?
Briefly, you do recall telling Agent Coleman that that night Tim had a white shirt and a brown sweater over it?
Mhm.
Okay. And after the People's Choice Club would close, Were there any after parties?
Well, it wasn't for me, but I'm sure other people did do after parties, but me, I had to go home, because like I said, I had babies, so I had
You
to
have
get home.
babies.
Yes.
But the after parties, would they be at a house or another club or?
It's possibility, like I said, it was another club, I can't recall, but I do know it was another club that probably would have been open after, if they left the People's Choice, they would go to another club, yes,
Okay, or they could go to somebody's house.
somebody's house.
All right, I don't have anything else. Thank you, Ms. Cox.
Any objection to her being excused? Okay, ma'am, you're excused.
Thank
may
you, sir.
come down,
May she be excused to
Yes.
sit in the pulpit?
if she likes.
Thank you.
Who's your next witness, and how long will they take?
Linda Cook, that would depend on Cross. Not very long from us.
We'll get started then. Linda Cook. And if you'll come to me, please. You'll face me and raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in the trial of this case shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes.
Okay, if you'll have a seat, please. And if you would state your name for the record, please.
Linda Cook.
Good morning, almost lunchtime, Ms. Cook. Did you go by Linda Morgan out of town?
Yes,
Okay, so Linda Cook's your maiden name? I mean,
Right.
I'm sorry, your married name?
yes,
Okay. I'm gonna show you State's Exhibit 6. Did you know Tim Coggins?
yes.
How long had you known him?
I know that when we stayed in Spalding Heights, and I know his parents.
Okay. Do you recall seeing Tim back on October 7th of 1983? Do you remember seeing him at a party?
Yes,
Okay, where was that party?
it was they called it South Side on Coggin Street.
Okay, was it considered kind of an after party, maybe after the clubs had closed?
It was late.
Okay, do you remember if it was late after midnight into the early morning hours of the 8th?
It was over in the midnight.
Okay, it was later than midnight?
Right.
Okay. Who was Tim with?
He was with 3 white dudes.
Okay, did you know them?
No,
All right, you'd never seen them before?
no,
Okay. Did you say anything to Tim about it?
yes.
What did you tell him?
Well, he got out the car with him, and he was real high. He had been drinking.
Okay, and so when you say high, you mean drunk?
Drunk,
Okay,
right. He was real
not
drunk.
necessarily high on drugs, but
Right,
drunk.
he was drunk.
Okay, and so Tim was really drunk?
Yes.
All right,
And he was gonna bring him in the house, and I told him that the white boy could come in my house.
okay, did he tell you where he was going?
He said they were going to Sunnyside.
Okay, Sunnyside?
Mm-hmm.
All right. But were you ever, do you recall investigators showing you any pictures or anything?
Yes.
But you couldn't identify anybody?
No.
Okay. And do you recall the car?
It was like a small car.
Okay, so it was a car, you just don't recall the color today?
No.
And I understand it's been a long time.
Yes.
And the house where you saw Tim, was that in Spalding County?
Yes.
And after you saw Tim in the late night to early morning hours, did you ever see him again?
No.
Okay. And did you hear shortly thereafter that he had died?
Where the GBI came back over there to the house, and they were asking me, did I see Tim with some white dude? And I told him yes. And he was asking me, how did they look and everything? I said, well, one had real pretty black hair, and the other had blonde hair, and one had some funny looking eyes.
Okay.
And he said, well, you about the last one probably seen him alive.
Okay. I don't have anything else for you. Thank you very much, Ms. Cook.
Ms. Cross?
Just a couple of questions. Yeah, Ms. Morgan, my name's Martin Willie, I represent Mr. Gebhardt, who's been charged and accused in this case. And I appreciate you being here. Is that the only, you gave them a statement back in 1983? You talked to the law back in 1983?
Mhm.
Is that correct?
Right.
Okay. And again, Tim came to your residence,
Yes,
and there was a party there?
yes.
Okay. And were there a lot of people there?
Well, it was, like I said, it was late. A lot of them had left, but it was just a few of them there.
And, because it was real late, and a lot of them had left.
Yes,
So this was an after-party type place where people that come from the club, is that fair to say?
yes, because it was a clubhouse behind us, and a lot of them go to that clubhouse. And Tim, as I remember, Tim them were coming, they were leaving that clubhouse, and they were getting ready to leave. And I was standing in the door because the party was just about over, and that's when I seen Tim coming up, and he was fit to come to the house. That's when I told him he was not bringing them in my house.
Okay. So the party was just about over, and
Yes,
you didn't feel like more folks coming around and getting involved in the party, is that correct?
the party was over with.
Yes, ma'am. And so, well, everybody's got their own, was it because they were white, or you just didn't know them, or, and that's fine, they were just people you didn't know?
Right.
Okay. And you just noted that they were white?
Yes.
Correct. Okay, so this would have been, like Ms. Broder said, this is the after-party place, the club
Mhm.
there, and everything was shutting down. So it'd have been real late, right?
It was late.
Been a long time since I
Yeah.
after-partied, but after-parties were sort of into the wee hours, or in the early morning of the next day, is that correct? Like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know what time, like, the People's Choice Club let out, as we used to say?
Sometime about 3 o'clock.
Okay. So this would have gone into after 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, right?
It wasn't that late. It was about 2 or 3 o'clock,
Okay.
something like that.
But the after party was shutting down?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Nothing else.
Any objection to her being excused?
None, Your Honor.
Ma'am, you're free to leave or to have a seat in the audience if you'd like.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a lunch break at this time. During this break, again, please do not discuss the case. If you'll retire to the jury room, we'll have your lunch brought in as soon as we can.